The Uber pulled away, its taillights disappearing down the rain-slicked street. I stood on the sidewalk, a single suitcase at my feet. The door to my son's house was shut, locked. My daughter-in-law, Chloe, had handed me the suitcase, her face a mask of cold satisfaction. "It's for the best, Eleanor. You need more care than we can give." My son David had stood behind her, staring at his shoes. He didn't look at me. He didn't say a word. "Before we get any further, if you're new here, you need to subscribe. This story doesn't have a happy beginning, and you're going to want to see how it ends. Now back to it. I had one place left to go. The Oak Haven Senior Living Community. I'd filled out the application months ago. A secret precaution after the fights with Chloe started getting worse. The interview had seemed positive. I had the money. My pension and Social Security were more than enough for the fees. I walked the 6 blocks to Oak Haven, the wheels of my suitcase catching on the cracks in the pavement. The building was modern, brick and glass, with manicured flower beds out front. It looked peaceful, a place to rest. The receptionist, a young woman with a tight smile, looked up as I dripped water onto her clean floor. "Can I help you?" "I'm Eleanor Mason. I have an appointment." "I believe my application was approved." She clicked on her keyboard. Her smile tightened further. "One moment, Mrs. Mason." She picked up the phone, turned away, and spoke in a low voice. "She's here." "Yes, I see." "Understood." An older woman in a severe navy blazer emerged from a back office. Ms. Higgins, the director. We'd met during my interview. She hadn't smiled then either. "Mrs. Mason?" she said, not offering a hand. "There's been a development. I'm afraid we cannot offer you a place at Oak Haven at this time." The words didn't compute. "I don't understand. My application was approved. I have the funds. I'm here." Ms. Higgins's gaze was like stone. "Our community has a certain demographic balance, a cultural fit we strive to maintain. We've decided to go in a different direction." "A cultural fit?" I repeated. The phrase was a ghost from a past I knew too well. A polite, clean word for an ugly truth. "Yes. We feel our current residents would be more comfortable with a candidate who shares a more similar background." I looked past her, into the common area. A dozen white faces looked back, some curious, some indifferent. I was the disruption, the problem. "My money is the same color as theirs," I said, my voice low. "This isn't about money, Mrs. Mason. It's about community harmony. I'm sure you understand." She took a slight step back, a physical period at the end of her sentence. The conversation was over. "I wish you the best of luck." She turned and walked back into her office, closing the door. The receptionist pointedly looked at her computer screen. I was 68 years old. I had worked for 45 years. I had raised a son. I had buried a husband. And I was being denied a roof over my head because my skin was a different shade than the people inside. I stood there for a full minute, the reality of my situation settling into my bones, like a deep cold. No home, no son, no plan. I turned and walked back out into the rain. The wheels of my suitcase, my entire life now reduced to one bag, made a hopeless sound on the wet concrete. I had nowhere to go. My only mistake was I was a black woman, and in this city, on this night, that was a crime, with no appeal. The rain got heavier. I walked aimlessly, the plastic handle of my suitcase cutting into my palm. A bus shelter offered a temporary reprieve. I sat on the narrow bench, water dripping from my coat onto the floor. I had $347 in my wallet. My phone battery was at 18%. My world had shrunk to the dimensions of a wet bus stop. Quick, direct voiceover. This is where it gets real. If you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. You need to see what happens next. A city bus pulled up with a hiss. The doors opened. The driver, a large man with a kind, tired face, looked at me. My suitcase. My situation. "You getting on, ma'am?" I didn't have a destination, but it was warm and dry inside. "Yes," I said, fumbling for cash. "Don't worry about it," he said. "Just find a seat." I found a spot near the back. The bus was mostly empty. An old man sleeping. A teenager with headphones. I rode the line to its end, then rode it back again. For 2 hours, I was just a passenger. It was a temporary moving shelter. But the driver's shift ended. He gave me an apologetic look as he parked at the terminal. "End of the line, ma'am." I got off. The terminal was closed for the night. I was back on the street. I saw the glow of an all-night diner across the street. The Skyline Diner. I went in, the bell on the door jangling. It smelled of old coffee and grease. A waitress with a name tag that read Shanice was wiping down a counter. She looked up, her eyes taking me in. The wet coat, the suitcase. "Just coffee, please," I said, sliding into a vinyl booth. She brought the coffee. "Rough night?" You could say that. She left me alone. I nursed that coffee for an hour, making the warmth last. When I went to pay, Shanice was at the register. "Look," she said, her voice low. "The night manager's a jerk. He'll make you leave if you're not eating. But there's a back booth near the kitchen. It's warmer. He might not see you for a while." It was a small kindness, a thread of grace. I moved to the back booth. I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, a different waitress was shaking my shoulder gently. It was morning. "Honey, you can't sleep here." Shift change. I stumbled back out into the gray dawn. My body ached from the booth. I was hungry. I was defeated. I found a public library when it opened. It was warm and quiet. I found an outlet and charged my phone. I had to think. I needed a plan. I searched for homeless shelters. The nearest one for women was across town. I called. A recorded message said beds were first come, first served, and intake started at 4 p.m. I had 7 hours to kill. I spent them in the library, trying to look like I was researching, moving between chairs so I wouldn't be noticed. At 3 p.m., I started the long walk to the shelter. It was in a part of the city that had been left behind. Boarded up windows, men huddled in doorways. The shelter was a grim brick building with a line already forming out front. Mostly women, some with children, all with the same hollow look in their eyes. We were the discarded. The intake process was brisk, dehumanizing. They took my name, my social security number. They searched my suitcase. They gave me a thin towel, a small bar of soap, and assigned me a cot in a large open room that smelled of bleach and despair. The cot was metal, the mattress plastic-covered and thin. The woman on the cot next to mine coughed all night, a wet rattling sound. This was my life now, a cot in a room of 100 other lost souls. The next day, I had to leave the shelter by 7 a.m. I went back to the library. I needed a lawyer. I needed to fight Oakhaven. This wasn't just about a room anymore. It was about the principle. It was about the last stand of my dignity. I found the name of a non-profit, the Fair Housing Advocacy Center. I called. I told my story to a young man named Leo. He listened. He didn't interrupt. "That's a clear Fair Housing Act violation, Mrs. Mason," he said, his voice crisp and certain. "The cultural fit line is a textbook discriminatory pretext. We can help you. Can you come to the office?" I took the bus across town. The office was small, cramped but busy. Leo was young, idealistic, with a fire in his eyes I hadn't seen in a long time. "We'll file a complaint with the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development," he explained, pulling up forms on his computer. "We'll also file a civil suit against Oakhaven. We'll subpoena their records. I want to see how many other black applicants they've turned away with that demographic balance excuse." It was the first spark of hope I'd felt. A fight, a real legal fight, but the law moved slowly. I was still homeless. That night, back at the shelter, as I lay on my cot listening to the symphony of coughs and snores, a fight broke out. 2 women screaming over a stolen blanket. Security guards rushed in, shouting, dragging them out. It was chaos. It was terrifying. I knew I couldn't stay here, not for the weeks or months this legal battle would take. I was too old. I wouldn't survive it. The next morning, I made a decision. I wouldn't wait for the law. I wouldn't rely on the shelter. I had one asset left. My story. I went back to the library. I created an email account. Then I found the local news tip lines, the investigative reporters, the community activists. I wrote a single blunt email. No pleas for sympathy. Just the facts. Subject: Oak Haven Senior Living's color-coded doors. My name is Eleanor Mason. I am 68 years old. I was denied housing at Oak Haven Senior Living because I am a black woman. The director, Ms. Higgins, told me I did not fit their demographic balance and would disrupt community harmony. I am now homeless. I sleep in a shelter. Attached is my approved application and a recording of my conversation with Ms. Higgins I made on my phone. My lawyer is Leo Martinez at the Fair Housing Advocacy Center. This is happening now. I attached the file. I included Leo's number. I didn't send it to one person. I sent it to 20. Then I went to the bus stop, my suitcase beside me, and I waited. I had thrown a stone into a pond. I had no idea if it would make a ripple or if it would just sink into the dark, silent water. My only mistake was I was a black woman, and I was done being quiet about it. The bus was late. I stood at the stop, the city's noise a dull roar around me. My phone, now my most vital possession, stayed dark and silent in my pocket. An hour passed. 2. The hope that had flared in Leo's office began to cool into a hard, familiar dread. The news didn't care. Why would they? I was just another old, black woman with a problem. Quick, direct voiceover. This is where the tide turns. If you're not subscribed, you're missing the moment everything changes. Hit that button. Then my phone vibrated. Once, then again, and again. It didn't stop. An unknown number. A text. Eleanor Mason? This is Sarah Jensen from Channel 7 News. We received your email. We'd like to speak with you today. Another text. Another reporter. An email notification popped up. Then another. Leo had called. I called him back. Eleanor, he said, his voice buzzing with energy. What did you do? My phone is blowing up. Channel 7, the Tribune, the national desk at the Associated Press. They all have your recording. I sent an email, I said, my voice calm. You started a fire. He replied, Where are you? Stay there. I'm coming to get you. We're holding a press conference at my office in 2 hours. Leo picked me up in his old dented sedan. He drove fast, talking a mile a minute. This is it, Eleanor. This is the leverage we needed. Oak Haven's board is already panicking. Their PR firm is calling me. They want to settle. I don't want a settlement, I said, looking out the window at the passing city. I want a room, and I want that woman, Higgins, to answer for what she said. The press conference was a surreal spectacle. I stood at a small podium in front of the Fair Housing office, microphones shoved in my face. Cameras flashed. I told my story again, the same facts, in the same flat tone. I played the recording from my phone. Ms. Higgins's voice, crisp and discriminatory, echoed for the cameras. Our community has a certain demographic balance. The questions came fast. Mrs. Mason, how does it feel to be homeless because of your race? What do you say to Oak Haven's claim that this is a misunderstanding? I looked directly into the camera lens. There is no misunderstanding. They didn't want a black woman in their building. It's that simple. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for what I paid for. A room. The story led the evening news. Senior citizen denied housing, now homeless, in alleged racial bias case. My face was everywhere. That night, I didn't go to the shelter. Leo booked me a room at a clean, quiet budget hotel near his office. It's on the nonprofit's dime, he said. You're a client in an active, high-profile case. It's procedure. I knew he was probably paying for it himself. I didn't argue. I took a long, hot shower and slept in a real bed. The next morning, the backlash began. Online comment sections were a war zone. Some people were outraged. Others called me a race baiter, a liar looking for a payout. But the story had legs. It was picked up by national outlets. A prominent civil rights organization held a rally outside Oak Haven's gates. Leo's phone rang incessantly. He put it on speaker during one call. It was Oakhaven's lawyer, a man named Reynolds. His voice was slick, conciliatory. "Leo, my client is prepared to offer a very generous settlement. We'll admit no wrongdoing, of course, but Mrs. Mason will be compensated handsomely for her distress. We're also prepared to offer her a suite at Oakhaven. No fees, for life." Leo looked at me. I shook my head. "Your client's distress is homelessness," Leo said into the phone. "The offer is an admission of guilt. We're not interested. We'll see you at the HUD hearing and in civil court, and we're adding the director, Ms. Higgins, as a named defendant in the suit for intentional infliction of emotional distress." He hung up. "They're scared," Leo said. "They're trying to make this go away." But then a different kind of call came. This one was to my cell phone. "A private number," I answered. "Hello." A woman's voice, tight with fury, spat into my ear. "You stupid old bitch. You think you've won? You think you can destroy people's lives? You're nothing. You're a homeless nobody. Know your place." The line went dead. It was Chloe. "My daughter-in-law." The call didn't frighten me. It energized me. It confirmed that I was hitting a nerve. The world they had built, where people like me knew our place, was cracking. The next development was the one I hadn't expected. Leo called me, his voice grim. "Eleanor, I just got a call from Child Protective Services. They received an anonymous tip. They're opening an investigation into your son and daughter-in-law for elder abuse and neglect." I was silent for a moment. David, my boy. Despite everything, a part of me still ached for him. "Who called?" I asked. "Anonymous," Leo repeated. "But we both know. Chloe. She was trying to create a counter-narrative, to paint me as a senile, difficult woman who had been a burden to her family. She was fighting back. The war was no longer just between me and Oakhaven. It had spread to my own family. The battle lines were drawn in blood. My blood. I had wanted a room. I had started a revolution. And now, my own son was caught in the crossfire. My only mistake was I was a black woman, and I had forgotten my place. Now everyone would have to find a new one. The CPS investigation was a weapon. It wasn't about protecting me. It was about muddying the waters. Leo got a copy of the anonymous complaint. It described me as verbally abusive, mentally unstable, and a danger to my grandchild. Chloe's fingerprints were all over it. She was trying to reframe the story. I wasn't a victim of racism. I was a problematic mother-in-law who'd been rightfully asked to leave. Quick, direct voiceover. "This is the final stand. Subscribe now. You need to see how this ends." Leo was furious. "This is a classic intimidation tactic. They're trying to discredit you before the HUD hearing." A process server found me at the hotel. It was a subpoena from my son's lawyer. David was petitioning the court for conservatorship, claiming I was incapable of managing my own affairs due to age and declining mental state. They wanted to control my money, my decisions, my life. They wanted to force me to drop the lawsuit against Oakhaven and silence me for good. I looked at the document. My son's signature was on it, right next to Chloe's. That was the final break. The last thread of maternal connection, severed. I didn't go to the library that day. I went to a copy shop. I made 200 copies of a single flyer. At the top was a photo of me from my retirement party, smiling. Underneath, in large, bold type, it read, "My son and his wife kicked me out. Oakhaven Senior Living said I wasn't the right color. Now, they want a judge to declare me incompetent to silence me. This is elder abuse. This is racial discrimination. I am Eleanor Mason. I am 68 years old, and I am not going away." At the bottom, I listed the case numbers for the HUD complaint and the conservatorship petition and the date of the first court hearing. That afternoon, I stood outside the county courthouse. I didn't shout. I didn't hold a sign. I simply stood there and handed a flyer to every person who walked in or out. Lawyers, jurors, defendants, reporters. I handed one to a reporter from the Tribune who had covered the story. Her eyes widened as she read it. "Mrs. Mason?" Is this true? She asked, pulling out her phone to record. It is, I said, my voice steady. The document's a public record. The next day, the story exploded again. But this time, the angle was different. Son seeks conservatorship of mother in wake of her racial discrimination lawsuit. The public sympathy, which had been divided, solidified behind me. The optics were devastating for them. The image of a son trying to legally incapacitate his mother after she'd been made homeless was a narrative even their PR firm couldn't spin. The pressure became unbearable for everyone. I was sitting in Leo's office when the call came. It was David, not his lawyer, him. Mom? His voice was ragged. They dropped the conservatorship. Chloe, she's left. She took the kids and went to her mother's. She said the media was camped out at the house, that they were getting death threats. She blames me. She blames you. I said nothing. I just listened to the sound of my son's life collapsing. The HOA is threatening fines because of the news vans. My job, they put me on administrative leave until the situation is resolved. He was crying now, quiet, broken sobs. I lost everything, Mom. I lost my family. I lost my house. I lost my job. I finally spoke. You lost me first, David. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, a click. He was gone. The following week, we walked into the HUD mediation. Oak Haven's board and their lawyers were there. Miss Higgins was not. She had been terminated, we were told. Their lead negotiator, a weary-looking man, didn't bother with pleasantries. Name your price, Mrs. Mason. Let's end this. Leo slid a single piece of paper across the table. It wasn't a financial demand. It was a list. 1. A formal, public apology from the Oak Haven board, published in the Tribune, admitting to racial discrimination. 2. A full scholarship fund established in my name to cover the fees for 5 low-income minority seniors each year, in perpetuity. 3. My immediate no-cost admission to the Oak Haven community, in the finest available suite. 4. The removal of the demographic balance clause from all internal policies. 5. Mandatory racial sensitivity and Fair Housing Act training for all staff, overseen by a third-party auditor of our choosing. The man read it. He looked at his clients. They nodded, their faces grim. They had no leverage left. The court of public opinion had already decided the case. We agree, he said. It was over. 2 weeks later, I moved into Oak Haven. The same receptionist who had turned me away now gave me a tight, terrified smile. My suite was on the top floor, with a view of the city. It was quiet. It was clean. It was mine. The other residents were wary at first. Then, a few of the women started to talk to me. They brought me cookies. They asked me about the news stories. I told them the truth. Some of them were ashamed. Others were just curious. But they saw I was just a woman, a tired woman who had fought a war and won. I never heard from David again. Some wounds don't heal. They just scar over, a permanent reminder of the injury. I sit on my balcony now, looking out at the lights of the city. I have my room. I have my peace. But it cost me my son. My only mistake was I was a black woman, and in the end that wasn't a mistake at all. It was the reason I had to fight. It was the fire that forged my victory. They tried to throw me away. But you can't discard a person who knows their own worth. I am Eleanor Mason, and I am home.